All right, so we're going to look at factoring by grouping. So this only happens when you have an even number of terms. So you've got to have 4, 6, 8, something like that number of terms to be able to do this. And you're going to split the terms into two groups. So the first thing I want you to check for is exactly what we did last week and make sure there's not a GCF for all 4 pieces first. And since we're dealing with, this is effectively a 1 and a 7, we already know that's not going to happen. There's nothing that's going to go into all 4 of these since we already have a 1. So our GCF really is just 1, which doesn't do anything for us. So then we're going to break these into 2 pieces. And there's a really nice, simple visual clue you can give yourself here, which is to put a line under the first 2 and then a line under the other 2. Okay, Mr. Daniello gets credit for that. And you're looking for a GCF from the first piece, and then you're looking for a GCF from the second piece. So we're detaching them from each other. So if I look at 2 and 14, I know that 2 goes into both of those. And I have an x to the third and an x squared, so I can take out an x squared from each of those. Okay, so I'm going to take out a 2x squared and see what I'm left with. So this is division. 2 divided by 2 is 1. If I have x to the third and I take out x squared, I'm left with just an x by itself. And then for the second piece, I'm going to do 14 divided by 2, which is going to give me a positive 7. And x squared divided by x squared goes away. Okay, let me just make sure you can see those are separate. And then we're going to do the same thing with the second piece. So what's the GCF from negative 1x and negative 7? Remembering that you can put that 1 in there to help you. And it's just 1, but it's negative 1 because that first term is negative. If that first term is negative, we always take out a negative 1. Okay? And then we see what we're left with. So negative 1 divided by negative 1 is positive 1, so we're just left with an x. Negative 7 divided by negative 1 gives me a positive 7. And this is my favorite part of grouping, is right here you already know that you have done this correctly because whatever's inside of these parentheses should always be exactly the same. And you can use that to kind of help yourself figure out what the GCF would have to be here. Okay, so my answer is x plus 7 because these two are the same. And my second factor is what's left over. So 2x squared and that minus 1. That is how you factor these. And if you want to check your work, you can do that through foiling, where you then go back and you multiply x times 2x squared, x times negative 1, 7 times 2x squared, 7 times negative 1, and you should get back to where you started with those 4 terms. Okay? Let's look at the second one. So in this one, we're going to look for a GCF first, see if there's a GCF for all terms, and we can use some of those divisibility tricks that we looked at before. The big thing that jumps out to me is that these are all even. So we can divide all of these by 2. And that tells me right away one of my factors is 2. And we're going to see what we're left with. So we're just going to divide each of these by 2 and see what we get, which should leave us with 12k to the third minus 9k squared plus 20k minus 15. And then I would just do a double check and make sure there's no other GCF, because sometimes you don't pick the biggest thing right away and you need to do it in 2 steps, which is totally fine. But I know these ones are divisible by 3, but 3 doesn't go into this one. We got some odd and even, so I can't take out a 2, so I'm probably good. The next piece is then to do that line, as Mr. Daniello calls it, and we're going to just find a GCF for these two pieces. So what number goes into 12 and 9? In this case, it's going to be 3. And then I have k to the third and k to the second, so I can take out at most 2 k's, so k squared. Okay, so if I take out 3k squared, I am now left with, from dividing here and dividing here, 4k minus 3. And then in the second piece, I need to find a GCF of 20k and 15, which is going to be 5. Hopefully that's starting to jump out at you. And it's going to be a positive 5, so positive 5. And then what am I left with? 20 divided by 5 is 4 with a k. Negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3. And again, you know you've done it correctly because this piece and this piece are the same. That's when you have a little like woohoo moment. So I've got 4k minus 3. That's one of my factors from here. And then I'm left with 3k squared plus 5 from 3k squared plus 5. And then the big thing that gets a lot of people is don't forget about the 2, because that's part of your answer. And I always draw that big arrow there to remind myself. Okay, so that is your final answer. And again, if you wanted to check it, you would FOIL these two together, or use the box method if you prefer, and then you would distribute the 2 to it.